What's going on, YouTube? Okay, so today we're gonna have a quick discussion about the fast effects timing chart as well as turn player priority in any given phase. So what I have over here on the screen is the official fast effects timing chart put out by Konami. It's on the fast effect timing chart link on their official website, so I will give the link to you guys in the description if you want to pull up this picture as well as the page that has the description for everything that's going on here. But I will break this down for you and explain to you guys what is turn player priority and how the fast effect timing chart works and how it explains how the flow of the game will go throughout any given phase. So first of all, we're going to explain what an open game state is. So in an open game state, the turn player always has priority to make an action. So that's box A up here. So any given phase starts here in box A. So when you enter the main phase 1, for example, that gives you a good example. Entering main phase 1, turn player now has priority to make an action. The opponent cannot make an action because the game state is open. The turn player may perform any appropriate action. Every phase and step begins here, depending on what turn the turn player wants to do. Follow the arrow below. So the three options that a player can make when they are in their open game state on the main phase 1, for example, is the turn player takes an action that does not start a chain. So that's normal summoning, setting a monster, setting a card, anything like that, changing a battle position, special summon that doesn't start a chain, like special summoning Cyber Dragon, for example, or something along those lines. And if you go to this box, then you follow, it's like a flow chart. You follow the fast effect timing chart down. So does the action performed activate a trigger effect? So if a monster has an on-summon effect, if you normal summon that monster, which doesn't start a chain, if that monster has an on-summon effect, then it'll have a trigger effect. If yes, you go into chain rules. If no, you go to box B. So if yes, say you normal summon Cyber Dragon Core, for example, you would go to chain rules because Cyber Dragon Core will have its on-summon effect activated. It'll be chain link 1, and then we all know how chains work. The opponent has a chance to respond, then you can respond, and so on and so forth until no one has any more responses. And then at that point, you resolve the chain backwards. And then after the chain resolves, so provided that the answer was yes for this box here, you go to chain rules, and then after the chain resolves, you go right back to this box here. So after this chain resolves, is there a trigger effect that activated? If yes, repeat until you no longer have a triggered effect at the end of a chain. If there is no triggered effect, the turn player can activate a quick effect. Do they have one? Yes, chain rules. No, move on. If no, the opponent can activate a quick effect. If neither player wishes to activate a quick effect on resolution of an action that did not cause a triggered effect, then you go right back to an open game state. What this means, however, a nice little interaction that you have here is if you normal summon a monster that has doesn't have an on-summon effect, but however has a quick effect that can be used on the field, such as Lilith, Lady of Lament, which is a good example. If you normal summon your Lilith and it doesn't cause any sort of triggered effects, you are legally allowed to activate the effect of your Lilith as Chainlink 1 in box B here, because turn player can make a fast action before the opponent can. So you can activate your Lilith, tribute an opponent's monster if you have Lair up, before your opponent can activate a quick effect. So a lot of people seem to think that if you normal summon the Lilith, you have to give the opponent the chance to use a quick effect before you can use Lilith's quick effect. That's not the case. On summon of your Lilith, you have priority to use your Lilith's quick effect before your opponent can use a quick effect. So provided no player wishes to use a quick effect, you go back to box A and you enter an open game state again. The open game state, as I remind you, is when the turn player can make an appropriate action however they see fit. So one of the other two actions they can make is turn player activates a card or effect that does start a chain, activating Monster Reborn, activating Raigeki. Any sort of spell, trap card, or monster effect that starts a chain happens here. An ignition effect, these all are part of this box. After that, you go into the chain rules, as I explained previously. After the chain is done, you go back here. Did the chain activate a triggered effect? If yes, chain again, and so on until this box is no. And then if no, there was no trigger effect, you move on to turn player can activate a fast effect. Opponent can activate a fast effect. If both players refuse to do so, you go back to an open game state. So the chart is really self-explanatory. And the last action that the player can make in their open game state is passing priority. So when you pass priority, that is, for example, attempting to move from the main phase to the battle phase, for example. At this point, turn player passing is turn player declaring, I wish to move on to the battle phase. The opponent at this point is allowed to activate a fast effect. So when you try to go from your main phase to your battle phase, the opponent has a chance to respond to that, your attempted action, with a quick effect at this point. If they do, chain rules and so on. Does it activate a triggered effect? Do players wish to use a fast effect? If no, if the opponent used a fast effect on your attempt to go from the main phase to the battle phase, say they try to Nibiru you when you attempt to go from the main phase to the battle phase, you will go through all this, and then after all that, if no one wishes to use another fast effect after that's resolved, you go back to an open game state and you remain in the main phase 1 because you did not get to the box that allows you to pass from one phase to the next. So then you go back here, say you attempt to pass again, the opponent doesn't have Nibiru, okay, they pass. Do both players agree to move to the next phase/step? So what this means here is that even if you declare, I wish to move to the battle phase, if the opponent does not want to use a quick effect, at that point, before moving on to the next phase, you are still allowed to decide to use a quick effect of your own, in which case you go to chain rules and then you go through the box all the way back to an open game state. The only situation where you would actually move from one phase to the next is if both players agree to move to the next step and neither player wishes to use a quick effect on the attempt to move from one phase to the next. Now, one thing that's really interesting on this box here, do both players agree to move to the next phase/step, is important if both players have an effect that needs to resolve in the end phase, for example. So say you're attempting to move from the end phase of your turn to passing to the opponent's turn. So you would go through all these, you're in end phase, you can use a fast effect, stuff like that. Now say you want to move to the next turn. At this situation, both players need to resolve their effect. So for example, if you've activated Widow Anchor this turn, you took one of your opponent's monsters, and you have to return that monster in the end phase, as well as your opponent Farfa'd one of your monsters, okay? So your opponent's monster, your opponent has to resolve Farfa in the end phase, and you have to resolve your Widow Anchor, giving them back the monster. So both players have an effect that they need to resolve at the end phase of the turn. In this situation, what will happen is the turn player is the one that has to perform an action first. You can decide to either, say the turn player would be me, activated the Widow Anchor, and my opponent's the one who used the Farfa. So I have to return my opponent's monster. In the end phase, I can either return the monster, resolve my Widow Anchor, or I can pass priority to my opponent and ask them if they wish to resolve the Farfa before I resolve my Widow Anchor. So this is something that you can do. However, the opponent also has the same the same sort of interaction that they can do, where they can decide, no, I will pass priority back to you. I wish for you to resolve your Widow Anchor before I resolve my Farfa. And the thing is, both players technically have the right to pass indefinitely, but you can't exactly do that. So if turn player ends up passing, decides he doesn't want to resolve his Widow Anchor yet, but the opponent decides to pass back and decide they don't want to resolve their Farfa yet, then the turn player has no choice but to resolve their Widow Anchor at that point. So the turn player will essentially always, unless the opponent wishes to resolve their effect first, the turn player will always be the one to resolve their effects, like in the end phase, something like a Widow Anchor or a Farfa, that will need to resolve it first. So basically, this is how the fast effects timing chart works. If you come over here onto the website, you also have an explanation of when a game state is open, when a game state is not open. You also have the entire chart broken down into a table for you guys, and it explains to you at all times where in which box in the chart we are. So I will be leaving a link to this whole page for you guys, but I hope that this description of the fast effects timing chart was satisfactory enough for you guys that you understand who has priority at what time, what actions you can or can't perform on resolution of a chain, and things like that. So anyways, guys, I hope this was enlightening to you guys, and I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that you guys want to come check out my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/disencoder. But anyways, boys, have a good one, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!